Very good morning, everyone. How are we doing? I hope you're doing well. Apologies, it's been a moment or so since I've been able to do a live for you all, but nevertheless, without any further ado, we'll get straight into it. So, the DXY, I'm not sure if you went over my breakdown that I went over this morning. So, we took a short position on Monday, US dollar CAD short, based on pretty much the concept of after that higher high on the weekly time frame, we're anticipating a move towards the downside on the DXY. That was then confirmed by this daily order block that price. Then we saw a bearish engulfing candle to the downside, of course, on the 2nd of July 2026. That allowed us to trade out of a daily order block. Once we then refined that daily order block down, we then were trading out of a refined area on the 4 hour time frame. Pricing returned to that 4 hour order block, but what we then saw was price action actually developing on the 4 hour time frame. If I give my illustration, we had the low created, lower high, lower low. So of course, anticipating that lower high, lower low continuation formation, and then on the 50-minute time frame, towards the highs here, we can see perfectly how price was developing in terms of a break of structure. So we had an area in the market where price wasn't doing much whatsoever. We pulled into that higher time frame point of interest by way of the 4 hour and the daily order block area. So therefore, I'm looking for price to turn around. And then we had that very subtle break of structure on the 15-minute time frame, which then gave me the confidence to take a short position on US dollar CAD. Anyhow, so that's a quick explanation of what was done a couple of days ago. So nevertheless, where are we about in the here and now? So still weekly time frame, we aren't really trading short out of any higher time frame point of interest. Price is, of course, looking incredibly bullish across weekly and daily. However, what's good to see is this daily order block to the downside is holding. So I am still longer term bullish on the DXY as a result of many factors, one of which is just the technicals, but of course with the fundamentals as well. As I was explaining to a friend of mine, I just don't believe that the US dollar are going to be instigating conflict and it's going to be a negative to the US dollar. It just wouldn't make sense, right? So, of course, looking for long term, the DXY to push towards the upside. And of course, if we're just looking at the fundamentals of that, the technicals back that up. As we can see, most recent price action on the weekly time frame, we have closed above those areas to the high. So, of course, after the higher high on the weekly time frame, we're now expecting that higher low for a higher high continuation. And of course, trading that short position on the US dollar CAD was just, in fact, using or trading the manipulation of the higher low. Anyhow, here and now, daily time frame, as I said, daily order block holding up to the downside. So potentially, could we say still looking for continued short term on the DXY? I think so until further notice. If you have a look at the 4 hour time frame, we can see how prices developed nicely, had that low in the market after the low, expecting lower high for a low low continuation. You can see the immediacy that we're running into that 4 hour 50 MA. That, in all honesty, for me, it's the fact that, well, what's the performance thus far? We were trending above the 4 hour 50 MA and price was staying above that 4 hour 50 MA. Then we've had that break below the 4 hour 50 MA, giving us our first sign of confirmation that potentially the DXY could turn around. Then once we had that break below the 4 hour 50 MA, creating that low, of course, at some point we may well then trend above the 4 hour 50 MA. So I'm hoping that this current 4 hour candle within the next 25 minutes closes below that 4 hour 50 MA. And then on the lower time frames, I'll be looking for price to dip back up in to a lower time frame order block for continued shorts for then price to make the lower low on the DXY. So that's the overall thought process initially on the DXY. So I'm looking at potential US dollar weakness. So what could that then mean? GU, EU, AU potential long positions, US dollar JPY potential shorts, US dollar CAD potential shorts. So let's have a look to see what we got throughout the day. And then, of course, we've got our lower time frame points of interest on the chart that I'll just be looking to see once we then have, if you look on the 15-minute time frame, this area here where price breaks and hopefully closes below that 4 hour 50 MA. I'll then be looking for price to return back up to this 15-minute order block. Give me a confirmation. Then I'll be looking to go across to the cross pairs to see then if we have the confirmation to take, let's say, a potential, we'll go long on GU using US dollar weakness. That's what we have at the moment. So first and foremost, my favorite going into the day, AUD US dollar, was well, we won't talk about the price action a couple of months ago, but it's not any news. I was looking to short this for many weeks, potentially even months, as a result of price coming into the left-hand side on the weekly time frame. If I zoom out, this higher time frame weekly order block, that price was failing to break and close above. Now we've had that move away as anticipated from that higher time frame weekly order block. So this is the order block. Price came in. We've had that move away. However, on the way there, as price was pushing up, price created us a nice weekly order block towards the upside. Now, why I'm interested in taking long positions is because weekly order block. So if towards the upside. So of course, I'm not looking to short AUD US dollar because we're in that higher time frame weekly order block. My thought process and strategy is that I'm looking for price to want to come out of that order block towards the upside. Is then down to me on the lower time frames to gain that confirmation and then simply trade it by looking for confluence. So initially, does this make sense? If I'm looking to long AUD US dollar, that then means I'm going to have the expectation that the Aussie dollar is going to push towards the highs. But more importantly, I need to find reason why the US dollar is looking to weaken. We're already going over the DXY. What is our anticipation? Rhetorically, then we're looking for the DXY to weaken, meaning a weak US dollar, meaning that if I'm then going to buy Aussie dollar, that should then go up on the basis that we're correct that the DXY is looking to weaken. Aussie dollar should then move towards the high. So first and foremost, we have confirmation across the DXY and across a pair that we're looking to trade, why it makes sense initially to look for a long position on AU. Then when we go back to the price action structure and strategy on AU, we're supported towards the upside based on that weekly 50 MA on the weekly time frame. So also we're just stacking the confluence and reasons why it would make good sense to potentially look for a long position on AU, not only based on the pair itself, but based on the catalyst, the DXY. So first and foremost, we're not going to be trading from higher time frame gamble. It's not what we do. We refine areas down constantly to then get best risk to reward ratio for our money. We're then looking into that higher time frame weekly order blocks. You can see here to the bottom right hand chart, daily time frame, daily order block. And why is that important? I always hear you guys ask me, well, why are we using that particular order block? Well, from this area on the daily time frame, we have had a significant break of structure towards the upside, breaking all structure points to the left hand side. Therefore, this point of interest in the area becomes valid as a result of breaking structure. Then when I refine this area down, do I have an order block to give that ownership towards a break of structure? Yes, I do, by way of daily time frame. And then the importance that we can see is price action on that daily time frame is failing to break and close below that daily order block. Therefore, confirmation that potentially here is an area in the market where we could anticipate a turnaround from. Now, what you can see in the immediacy then, if we start to go down to the lower time frame, so just to recap, weekly looking good bullish, daily looking potentially good bullish. But as I always say, just because price action is in your valid point of interest, it doesn't necessarily mean then you're looking to take an immediate position. What it means is you need to have your confirmation nailed on, so then you can trade with confluence and also trade with confidence, like like my position on US dollar CAD, confident with the position, confident with the analysis, let the trade go, move to break even when it felt good to do so, perhaps, and then price just continue moving in the direction. So exactly that, trade with confidence. Now, how is price action and strategy looking on the 4 hour time frame? So as you guys all know, that is the first time frame that I'm really concerned about. What is price action doing? So in the most basic format of price action, what can we see? Price was making lower lows, potential lower high for that lower low continuation. Price then moved up towards the upside, not breaking structure, but we had a bullish move. That bullish move then gave us a 4 hour order block to the downside. However, looking at the 4 hour time frame, we're not yet confirmed bullish. I've got no right to look for a long position just yet on AUD US dollar at this point in time. However, what we can see is after that, we've then had a move towards the upside, breaking structure points to the left-hand side. So we've now definitely got the confirmation that we've made a higher high in the market after a higher high, looking for a higher low for a higher high continuation. We have that exactly. So once price then comes back down to that point of interest that created the most recent high, what would I be expecting? A higher low to be, a higher high to be created from this higher low area. What I'm happy to see is a 4 hour 50 MA. So look at the performance of that 4 hour 50 MA. what do we have? Price has broken above it. First key sign in terms of a clue that price is ready to move to the up towards the upside. Price came into that 4-hour 50 MA, rejection, 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 bullish engulfing off from that area. Again, if I was to continue to simplify, or rather use analysis, we have another 4-hour order block just here that price is failing to break below, and then we have the 4-hour 50 MA onside where price is respected. So it's down to us now to have a look on the lower time frame to see where it makes sense based on the 15-minute time frame to understand price action and structure further. So this is 15-minute time frame on the larger screen, and you can see we've got those 2 points of interest by way of the 4-hour order block that I missed initially, this one here, and the one down at the lows that has been tapped multiple times over. However, once refined area down, you can see that the 15-minute order block is still very much so available. So let me go full screen again for you guys so you can have a look at the 2 points of interest. So of course, A point and B point, my best case scenario would be price to come back down to this 15-minute order block just here as a result of that 15-minute order block, in my opinion, being the reason why we're seeing that overall push towards the high. So of course, if price wants to come back down towards that order block, I'd be then looking for a position long from that area. However, in the immediacy, we can see this 4-hour order block has been created recently, and there is a 15-minute order block towards this area here. So for example, initially I'd be looking to the left here by way of 15-minute order block. However, it's happened already and price has broken below that area. So therefore, I'm not going to have that on the chart anymore. And I'm not going to look any further left in this area. It's the refined area of the 4-hour order block, which is this 15-minute order block. However, newest 4-hour order block, we can see this 15-minute order block that's available. So it hasn't done anything just yet in terms of breaking structure. And as I always say, one line would do it for me. I'd be happy to utilize this 15-minute order block if now we can see price break above, pull back after that high, higher low for that higher high continuation. So very simple. Failing that, worst case scenario, price comes straight back. I'll be looking for confirmations towards the high before looking for that long position on AU. So AU for me is a bit of a firm favorite today from this area just here. I'll be looking to wait for a bullish engulfing candle 15-minute time frame from there before looking to go long, and then using price. To be honest, I think this would be very good in terms of risk-reward ratio. I'll be looking to take price up initially towards that daily 50 MA, where if you look to the daily time frame, look at the performance of the daily 50 MA, price rejecting it to the downside. And then with that said, around about the area of the daily 50 MA, we can see a daily order book to the downside as well, where it make good sense to take profits from that area. So daily 50 MA, a nice target for a nice 1-2. Well, that's probably a little bit far-fetched with that kind of stop loss. AU maximum of 20 pip stop loss. So if we were to utilize 15 pip stop loss there, be looking at a nice 1-7 based on that lowest point of interest. So if I mark that off, alerts are already set, and that is in pink because it's a favorite for the day. So that's US dollar CAD. Any questions at all before I move on for the rest of the pairs? Probably not, because you guys are pretty shy. So US dollar CAD. I am looking for, so based on what we said already on the DXY, what would be the anticipation for me to look for in US dollar CAD? If I understand that DXY is looking to move towards the downside, and of course US dollar CAD should also look towards look to short towards the downside. I think that price has already developed nicely, hoping that this current 4-hour candle also, well, previous 4-hour candles already done the business. So we're looking at price making that low based on this current 4-hour candle for that lower high, lower low continuation. But if I take a step backwards, nothing on the weekly time frame for us to look to short from. My analysis, first and foremost, US dollar CAD is stemming from the daily time frame. Bottom right hand chart, you can see that daily order block to the left hand side just here. Price is now ranging in and around that area. We have that confirmation on the 4-hour time frame based on the fact that price isn't really doing too much, but we have had the first sign by way of break below 4-hour 50 MA, which has then created the first low in the market, lower high, lower low continuation. Does it make sense based on what we're looking at on the DXY? I believe so. So I'm going to continue to roll with that until proven otherwise. And what that would look like is being proven otherwise. To me, at the moment, is price breaking above that 4-hour order block towards the upside, and a 4-hour, and a daily candle closing above that daily order block. Until I have that, I will be sell bias on US dollar CAD. But again, just because I'm sell bias on US dollar CAD, it doesn't necessarily mean I need to take a short position on US dollar CAD if the DXY doesn't align. So if the DXY rockets towards the upside and US dollar CAD still is failing to break above the area, it doesn't mean I'm going to immediately take a short because I know that the catalyst by way of DXY is bullish. So it doesn't make sense then to sell US dollar CAD if the DXY is bullish. Anyhow, here and now, it's looking bearish. So I'm in favor of short position. I'm liking the development of the 15-minute time frame. You see here, low in the market, lower high. This is where my short position came in. Lower low created. We've come back up into that 15-minute point of interest left behind. In fact, my short position was to the left-hand side here, sorry. 15-minute order block left behind, and we're just trending back out of that area. So after this now low, we have to understand what price action is doing on the 4-hour, low created, lower high, lower low. It's then down to us to look for those breaks of structures in terms of immediacy and then take a short position if it makes sense. So 15-minute order block no longer available as a result of price coming into the area. That was my short position on Monday. Price has come away from that. 15-minute order block now has been mitigated as well. So I don't really foresee price to come back up to this 15-minute order block. But just look how nice price action is trending away from the area. Lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high. Now we must consider as a result of the lower low being created. So let me have a look to see if there's a 15-minute order block in and around that break of structure, which I can see there is at the highs of Asia. So I like that as well. So Asia's created a break of structure to the downside. I'll just move my alert up now where that 15-minute order block. So now we have 2 points of interest. So I wouldn't say worst case scenario, but it's definitely something to think about. So I've got 2 valid points of interest on the market, one of which is by way of higher time frame directional bias. We've got that by the fact we're trading out of the 4-hour order block. So that's this highest area. That's where I'd like to take the short position down from. But as I say to you guys, price doesn't really care where you'd like to take the short position down, short position from. If price wants to come up to this 15-minute order block, give me signs of confirmation to sell from there, then I'll have to short from that area if I feel to do so. However, what I'll be looking for is my highest degree of entry criteria there. Bearish 15-minute engulfing candle. As I always say, that bearish 15-minute engulfing candle will take out 1 and 5-minute points of interest in terms of structure points. It's then going to leave me with a 15-minute order block to trade from. Better still, it would definitely leave me with a 1 or a 5-minute order block to trade from on the lower time frames. And it's down to your risk appetite, whether you want to take that short position down from the 15-minute order block left behind. So your position will look something similar to that with a nice 10-pip stop loss on US dollar CAD. Or you can take it from a lower order block, which is just going to increase or decrease your stop loss range, increase your take profit range, but you would, of course, would then run the risk of potentially missing a position because you would have to wait for price to come slightly higher. However, it's not a missed position if that's your strategy. So make your decision up about what you will like to do. For me, I'll be happy to take it from a 15-minute order block so long as that order block has come by way of bearish 15-minute engulfing candle, which are the highest degree of entry criteria for me. If that doesn't materialize, then I'll be waiting for price to move towards the higher area. Well, I'll be very aggressive here. I'll be waiting for a 1-minute break of structure from this area, and I'll take the short position down instantaneously. So that's US dollar CAD. I like that pair. Again, in pink, it's a favorite for me, and it also makes sense with what we're saying with the DXY. So here's one to throw in the mix also. Euro US dollar. So if we believe DXY is looking to move towards the downside, what should that do for a cross pair in terms of Euro US dollar? Well, with a weak dollar, that will give us signs that the euro is seemingly bullish against it. So in the immediacy, let's talk about where we are higher time frame. Higher time frame, I believe on the weekly time frame, we are most certainly bearish. So if you look at this structure point here on the higher time frame, weekly time frame, price was failing to break below this area and price was moving to the upside from that area. So of course, once we then see price break below, what do we have? A first low in the market. It's all the same information I'm telling you guys across all time frames. It's just the time frames that are changing and the way that you're executing the position on a certain time frame. So low created on the weekly. After a low is created, what is the anticipation? A lower high. If I'm looking to trade a lower high, I'm having the understanding that price should move towards the upside. Based on all the information that we've already spoken about, are we not correct to anticipate a move towards the upside on Euro US dollar if we're anticipating a weakened DXY. Yes, so although long term, I believe Euro US dollar is certainly looking to weaken, shorter term, as a result of weekly time frame low created, I'm expecting a pullback, and I'd be quite happy to trade the pullback on Euro US dollar if it makes sense. I mean, for me personally, AU and US dollar CAD looks a lot better, but if those setups don't materialize, I'd be quite happy to trade a long position on Euro US dollar for the following reasons. So let's make that slightly bigger. We can see there's no real bias on the higher time frame, but for what we've understood based on lower low created, we're expecting to trade the lower high. The same applies on the daily time frame. Unfortunately, there is no daily order block that I can look to manipulate, refine that area down, and say I'm now trading higher time frame directional bias. However, the same applies from the weekly. We have range based on the weekly time frame back up to that weekly and daily 50 MA. We also have range on the daily time frame. Look how beautifully it's trending to the downside. Low, lower high, lower low, potential lower high to be created before that lower low. So we have range in our anticipation of where our target should be based on, let's have a look at the performance. Weekly 50 MA, price is broken below, price respecting to the downside. Daily 50 MA, price is broken below, respecting price to the downside. So I expect price to want to gravitate to where? The daily and the weekly 50 MA, meaning that if we look at the 4-hour time frame, look at the range that we have back up to the daily and the 4-hour 50 MA. We've got 100 pips to the daily and 120 pips towards the weekly. So I have range towards the upside. Of course, we can be wrong, and based on a larger picture, as we've drawn here, the lower high could well be here. But based on the technicals, I'm seeing that the lower high could potentially be from this area a lot towards the upside. However, can we look to support reasons, aside from the ones we already have, reasons why we could look to anticipate long positions based on the 4-hour time frame? Let's have a look. Price has shown us on the 4-hour that we can trend lower low towards the downside. We can't necessarily say, in my opinion, at this stage, we have had breaks of structure to the downside, but we must understand is, for me previously, when I'm seeing a cluster of 4-hour candles, what am I always saying? I'm waiting for a bullish or a bearish candle to close either above in the bullish sense or below in the bearish sense from an area of which then I can say high created, wait for price to pull back down for that higher low. Look what we have on the 4-hour time frame. So we had an area in the market where price wasn't doing anything whatsoever. We then had a bullish engulfing candle coming out of that area. You can see it just here if I draw it. There you go. And then leaving that behind, did we have a 4-hour order block to then manipulate towards the upside? We had one just here. So it would have been a lovely position to have traded that potential long from this area. However, as a result of price just kind of ranging again, you can understand why a long position wasn't executed from there. However, moving forward, and as well as that, the 4-hour 50 MA was keeping or was limiting our range back up. So at this stage, like as I've said, if you look to the left, it's very difficult to really understand, do we have significant breaks of structure? No, we didn't. We only really had a break of an area in the market. However, what we can say, one line will always do it. Here's a structure point in the market. And now what we can see is price is now broken up towards the upside, creating a clear high. Now I want price to roll back down for the higher low, for the higher high on the 4-hour time frame. Excuse me. And then looking higher time frame, we understand why price would want to gravitate towards the upside anyway. So longer story short, Euro US dollar, I am, long bias based on the 4-hour order block. So 4-hour order block just here. When I put that across on all time frames, so you guys can have a better look, where's that coming out at? Sync globally. Oh, it's already there, just in it's that one. Cool. We're not going to trade from a 4-hour order block. This 4-hour order block makes sense because it's broken structure points towards the upside, and then refine that area down. If I bring you to the 15-minute time frame, here we are. Let me make it slightly larger so we can have a good look. And 15-minute order block to the left-hand side. Here it is. Why does that 15-minute order block make sense? Well, first and foremost, it's the only order block available just about that we can say prices move towards the upside from. Has that 15-minute order block broken structure points to the left? One line will do it. structure points to the left-hand side, break of structure towards the upside, then anticipation, high, higher low, higher high continuation. The only caveat to that, of course, is if I go back to the 4-hour time frame, we are trending out of a 4-hour order block where price is failing to break and close above. However, not to be fearful, it's just that we have a nice trading range. In the immediacy anyway, if price rolls back on the 15-minute time frame, our range is quite limited based on the fact that the 4-hour 50 EMA is keeping price towards the downside. So immediate targets, I'm going to look to take a long position on AU. My immediate targets are going to have to be the 4-hour 50 EMA. I'm going to have to manage that. Based on my stop loss, EU maximum of 15 pips, in my opinion. Do I have the range for that to make sense? I'd say so. If I use a 15 pip stop loss, I can still just about make close towards a 1 to 3. So my consideration would be actually closing that position out by the 4-hour 50 EMA based on the anticipation of the 4-hour performance, what we have, or based on the fact that most recent candles have not then closed above that 4-hour 50 EMA. So I'm expecting a rejection from this area back down to this order block, and then I'll look to take the long position. So that's one option. The second option, of course, is this 15-minute order block currently in the market. However, for me to take a long position from this 15-minute order block just here, I'm going to need to see price first and foremost develop dramatically, then roll back and then take the position down. So at the moment, that's why it's quite minimized in its size, because it's not an area where I'll be looking to take a long position from in any immediacy. It's going to be this lower order block. So that's where my alert is at the moment, just above the 15-minute order block. I'll be waiting for price to roll back down towards that area confirmation. Then I'll take a long position towards the upside, 4-hour 50 MA. So that is the summary on EU. Now we start to roll through US dollar JPY. Again, I always give a summary for you guys. If I'm anticipating DXY weakness, what do I expect to see on US dollar JPY? I'm going to have the anticipation that UJ is going to move towards the downside. Do I have any confirmation on any time frames that UJ could potentially move towards the downside? Weekly order block price is trending out of that to the downside. So, of course, am I looking to take longs or shorts from a weekly order block in the bearish direction? For me, it's going to be a short position. What's important to note is the most recent weekly candles. Have they closed above that weekly order block? No, they haven't. And what I like is the wick thrown towards the upside. So my anticipation is that price could well gravitate back towards that wick of last week's previous weekly high, find liquidity there and move towards the downside. With that said, looking to refine the area down, why I love it, in fact, is daily time frame. We have a look here. Look how price has developed from one bearish engulfing candle to the downside just here. Bearish engulfing candle is left behind a daily order block. Prices then come back up into that order block after breaking structures to the lows. Low, lower high, potential lower low towards the downside. Once we refine all of those areas down, refining the daily order block down, here we are. 4-hour order block. Does that 4-hour order block make sense? Has it done anything? If we look towards the upside, and it was quite difficult to anticipate price action because we were incredibly bullish. But what we can say is on the micro perspective, high, higher low, potential higher high, higher low, higher high, and then one bearish engulfing candle on that daily time frame has just wiped out all price action to the left-hand side, then giving us that 4-hour order block towards the area that the break was created. So, of course, I'm anticipating price to roll back up to that 4-hour order block, take the short position down, and off we go towards the downside. Lower time frames, what do we have? 15-minute order block right up at the highs. So that isn't actually refined within the 4-hour time frame, but what that is refined within is nicely the daily order block. So we've got a couple of points of interest on the 15-minute time frame where I'll be interested in taking a short position from. What's important to note is we have created a high on the 15-minute time frame. So any position taken short without breaking that most recent higher low area as a result of having that confirmed high has to be an aggressive position. So the best is to wait for price action to break below. As well as that, looking at the 4-hour time frame, you can see how the 4-hour candles are respecting the 4-hour 50 EMA towards the upside. So, of course, that is immediate range if you're looking to take a short position sooner rather than later. Despite wanting price to move towards the upside, what you must take into consideration is as price starts to make those higher highs and higher lows, we must remain following structure in terms of where the most recent high was created. Once we start making highs, we want price action to be taken out in terms of the higher low that created the higher high, pull back into the point of interest that actually broke structure, and then look for the short position down. So although I like UJ for short positions, and although I'm DXY sell bias, it's got an amber because price action hasn't developed on the 15-minute time frame as much as I'd like to do so. So I can't stress enough to you guys, just because price is in your point of interest, it doesn't mean you then have to take immediate position. Yes, price is in weekly, daily, 4-hour points of interest, but I don't have any confirmation on the 15-minute that I should be selling just yet. The trend is very much so bullish, and until I have a confirmation on that lower time frame for me to sell, I can't take a short position. It's as simple as that. So alerts are set of price going into that 15-minute order block anyway. And then what I'll do is wait for that to happen and then see if price starts to break structure points to the downside once price taps into that 15-minute order block. So no short position for me personally until price comes into this 15-minute order block. I just want to double check that there isn't a 15-minute order block within the 4-hour GAM box for me to take a position sooner rather than later. There is, in fact. So just a second. So 4-hour order block towards the highs, that is available right about the highs. So let me have a look. So now we have a couple of things to think about because we have more than one area where we want to short from. So when we have more than one area where we want to short from, the first point of interest is always going to have to be your highest degree of entry criteria because you have the risk of losing it. I'm not going to take too aggressive positions based on entry criteria and run the risk of losing both. So something needs to be done differently. So I'm going to need to see from this 15-minute order block, first and foremost, a break of structure. And that is going to have to come initially probably by way of a couple bearish 15-minute candles towards the downside, breaking structure. So as I've said, price is going to start trending up. I want structure points by way of the higher low to be broken, break, pull back, and I'll look for the short. So that's my first plan of action. And then as price gets towards these highs, I could be slightly more aggressive. However, that's going to be based on what the DXY is doing at the time. So when I see the DXY is in a position to move towards the downside, as you can see, that's probably going to be when my alert goes off on the DXY up at these highs where I can see there is a brand new 15-minute order block where price could well look to gravitate towards. Once the alert goes off on the DXY, then it would make great sense to go straight towards UJ to see if as the DXY has moved up, has UJ moved up the same degree of level, and where is the DXY? If the DXY is at the 15-minute order block on its own index, then I have the confluence to take an immediate position on US dollar JPY. I say immediate, but I mean I have the opportunity to look for a short position on UJ if it makes sense. Then for good example, I'll roll down to the 1-minute time frame on the DXY, look for a bearish engulfing candle on the 1-minute time frame, understand has there been a turnaround on the DXY, and then similarly UJ, I'll be waiting for price action to give me that confirmation. So UJ looks good. I'm going to give it an amber for now because I think EU, US dollar CAD, and AU look slightly better. And we're not going to trade all pairs at once. So that's UJ. I like UJ. A bit more development would be good, in my opinion. So GU, which is probably going to be the final pair because there is good opportunities on all of the favorite pairs. So there's no need to roll through GJ and GCAD because the better pairs are trending nicely. So there's no reason to move towards the others. So finally, GBP US dollar. What do we have? Higher time frame, weekly time frame. We do not, in my opinion. Okay, we can start a little bit better. There is a weekly order block just here, which I've left off so it doesn't clutter the chart, but you can see that we are now trading out of that weekly order block towards the downside. So here is, in my opinion, a bit of a conflict, and that's also why alongside UJ, I have an amber for GU. So coming out of this higher time frame weekly order block by way of the fact that we've had this bearish engulfing candle to the downside on the weekly time frame, which has then given us the opportunity to select this weekly order block, I can only technically, based on my strategy, look for short positions on GU. However, I will remove it to understand if I could use it as a confluence on the other pairs, based on my thought process. So ordinarily, I can only take short positions on GU based on the weekly time frame and that weekly order block. And it makes great sense because last week's weekly candle rejected what? The weekly 50 MA to the downside. So I'm expecting this weekly candle also to reject the weekly 50 MA to the downside. Hence why I'm only looking to take short positions down on GU. But let me explain why it makes good sense to potentially give GU a miss. In terms of refining the area down from that weekly time frame, we've got this daily order block. That as well, we can say one line will do it. Structure points immediately were there. We've had a break of structure towards the downside on the daily time frame, leaving a daily order block to the left-hand side where we're waiting for price now to gravitate back up in towards, refine the area down, confirmation short to the most restrictive areas. Now, if we start to go, if I haven't mentioned the daily 50 MA as well, unfortunately, yesterday's daily candle closed below the daily 50 MA. So my anticipation of today's daily candle, based on strategy and technicals, is that this current daily candle will at some point reject this daily 50 MA towards the downside. However, what I'd be happier to see is price on the daily, of course, on the lower time frames as well, move towards the upside. Which would that make sense? If I'm expecting DXY weakness, of course, I would then expect GU to emit signs of bullishness moving to the highs, but I would expect some point for us to reject that daily 50 MA to the downside. So that's my anticipation of the daily candle. Move to the highs based on DXY weakness, GU strength, reject the daily 50 MA at some point into the liquidity above, which we can already satisfy by way of daily order block refine 4-hour area, which I'll get into in just a moment, and then take a short position down. So I am only short bias and I wouldn't mind a short, to be honest. So I will go over a long scenario on why longs also make sense, but I'm in a higher time frame gamble. So I technically, fundamentally, on my strategy, I can't take a long position. So shorts only for me. However, intraday perspective, I could definitely understand why you might want to take a long position, but I think EU, AU, US dollar CAD are much better looking positions. However, I'll go through it. Strategy structure on the 4-hour time frame, very much so bullish. So that is, of course, giving you confirmation to take a long position. We've got a high created, higher low confirmed by way of this higher high. So, of course, after that higher high, I want to understand where the higher high was created from. We have a 4-hour order block to the left-hand side. That 4-hour order block now is where price is moving out of to the high. So that's why I can say to you guys, I can understand why you might want to take a long position, but for me, it's not available. 4-hour 50 EMA supporting structure towards the upside. So that's, of course, giving you good confidence to take the long position. And then 50-minute price action and structure, I've personally left it off. I've just called the area where potentially you could look for an order block to long from. Let's say if I put it on the chart, and actually there isn't one. So first and foremost, I wouldn't be able to take a long anyway, but even if there isn't an order block, what you're going to have to wait for is one to be created. And that's going to be by way of bullish engulfing candle on the 15-minute time frame. Once you get that, you have to take my word, you'll definitely then have a 15-minute order block. So long as you have a bullish engulfing candle on the 15, then you'd hope that that 15-minute bullish candle broke structures to the left-hand side. Then it's down to your risk appetite to see how you want to take that long position. Why I wouldn't take it is those reasons. Weekly 50 MA, I have the anticipation that we're rejecting that weekly 50 MA. We're already trending above that weekly 50 MA, so I don't know when that rejection is going to happen. The rejection of this weekly 50 MA could happen now. So that's why it's a risk to take a long position at this stage. What I'd be waiting for, I think, would be a better move, is to wait for those highs. So I know it might seem a bit far-fetched, a little bit boring, but for me, the better play is going to come from a short position down from that 4-hour order block up at those highs that created that beautiful break of structure on the 4-hour time frame. So that's what I'm going to be waiting for. So no immediate positions for me on GU. I'm going to be waiting for a short from this area, and that's pretty much all I can do on GBP US dollar. So I hope that makes sense, guys. As always, this will be recorded for those of you that are going to be watching later. Thank you very much for your patience over the last couple of months. Well, I won't say months, weeks, while I've had some time off and going over bits and bobs for my own strategic reasons, and I will catch you guys in the next video. So I'll get this uploaded, downloaded, and I'll send out it as soon as I possibly can. Take good care. All the very best in your trading day today. And if I'm going to take anything in the immediacy, I'll do my very best to update the chat. All the best. Take good care. See you soon.